guys, it's Sam, and this is my April wrap-up. I didn't read that much in April because it was tome topple, but I still feel like I read enough. I would have liked to have read one more book, but I'm just finishing that today as I'm filming this video. So the first book that I picked up in April was Red Rising by Pierce Brown. This is the first book in an adult science fiction dystopian trilogy, and I really enjoyed this one. I have a full review for it, which I will leave on the screen, but this definitely feels more science fiction-y than dystopian. I know that dystopian is a subgenre of science fiction, but this feels more like general sci-fi than dystopian sci-fi, and I really liked it. I went in with super low expectations. A lot of people say that this is like The Hunger Games, and that really is an injustice for this book because it doesn't really feel like The Hunger Games at all. It's a very different premise, it's a very different path to the thing that feels Hunger Gamesy but really isn't. Really at all. Like, every game that takes place in a book isn't The Hunger Games, okay? Like, it's not. So there were some things I didn't like about this book. I really enjoyed the majority of the characters, but I feel like the female characters in this book really were at a disservice, that they were typically used as plot devices to move the motivations of the male characters, especially the protagonist. So that was really irritating, and that happened at the very beginning of the book. I was able to push through that, but it was what ended up knocking down a star rating from this for me. I have heard, because people commented on my review about this book, that the female characters get way more fleshed out in future books and are really amazing, and that Pierce Brown took a lot of that critique to heart when he was writing the rest of the series. So that makes me very happy. I'm not a fan of dystopian, but I liked this, and I was so engaged with it and just eating it up completely. So I'm really looking forward to the rest of the series. If you haven't dived into this because you're fearful of dystopian, you're just done with dystopian, this is definitely an adult book, number one, and it doesn't feel dystopian tropey, to me at least. So I highly recommend this one, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I picked up was actually on audiobook, and that was A Gathering of Shadows by V.E. Schwab. This is the second book in the Darker Shade of Magic, I think it's called the Shades of Magic trilogy, but I was not a big fan of A Darker Shade of Magic. I will leave my review for that on the screen. So I went into this one with super low expectations as well, and which is why I read it on audiobook. And as far as the audiobook, I think this is a fairly decent audiobook. It has a male and female narrator for the different protagonists. And although the female narration's a little odd, and again, I'm not sure if that's because Lila as a character is just kind of that way, or if the narration is just, it's very crisp and like, the inflection's a little weird. But overall, it was pretty good. I listened to audiobooks on 2 speed anyway, so any kind of weird inflection kind of gets just sped up and you don't notice it quite as much. But I would definitely recommend it on audio if you're not really sure if you want to read the rest of the books in the series, because I know this has very mixed opinions. This is one of our nominees for the BookTube SFF Awards, which is specifically why I picked it up. But this one, I've still had similar feelings to the first book. I liked it more, I think, than the first book overall, because I liked some of the additions of different characters, but it still didn't feel like it should have. It still wasn't as good as I feel like it should have been. I feel like this series has so much potential, and it doesn't go there. It just, first off, Lila as a main character really, really annoys me. She is such a self-insert, borderline manic pixie dream girl in a way to me. Like, I can tell that the author fucking loves Lila and that she just wants to, like, be her. And it just is very annoying because it makes you feel like the author is beating over the head with like, love Lila, she's so different, she's so unique, and she's not. She is a classic girl thief character that's had a really hard life and I don't trust anybody and I'm not like other girls, and I'm just like so sick of it. I'm so sick of it. And I've seen her, and I know that the author before has said like, oh, she is so different. She's not. She's very tropey, and she rubs me incredibly the wrong way, and I feel like her distrust of people isn't really proven within the narrative because you don't really get to see like how hard her life was. Like, I feel like Vin and Mistborn, who annoys me as well, you get to see more of how hard her life was versus anything that you ever saw with Lila. And she's just tropey. She's just tropey. And I also feel like she's not as intelligent as she thinks she is. And I have lots of things to say about her, which I'll probably include in my gripe video, obviously, because I'm going to be doing a review and gripe on this book. There were things I liked. I liked Alucard as a new character that's introduced. He's amazing. But overall, I feel like not a lot happened in this. It was all building up to the very last part of the book, like the last chapter even, and that chapter could have just been tacked on to the last part of the last book, or could have been tacked on to the first part of the very last book in the series. there didn't need to be a second book. It was just wasting time and keeping the two protagonists apart for like the majority of the book, and it was really predictable. I was actually talking to Sarah Jane. We were both reading it around the same time, and we were predicting what would happen before it happened, and then it would happen, and we'd message each other and be like, the thing we thought would happen just happened. Like, yeah, it was mostly irritating. So I gave this one 2 out of 5 stars. Then Tome Topple happened, and I want to thank everybody who participated in Tome Topple this time around. Each time we run a round of Tome Topple, more people participate. It's even bigger, and it's even better. And there were so many people participating in sprints this time around, and it just seemed like a lot of fun. So many people got a lot of books read. So many people got a lot of pages read, and it was just overall a really good time. I was incredibly busy during Tome Topple, so I didn't get a ton read, but I accomplished what I wanted to accomplish, and that was reading The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. This took me the full 2 weeks to read, but I am so glad that I finally got it under my belt. I've already done a full review on this, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it. I'll link my review on the screen, but I really enjoyed this book. I like Quoth as the main character. This is the story of Quoth, and he's telling his story to somebody else, and Quoth, as of this book, we're not really sure what he is in this world, but he's somebody famous within this world. He is an arcanist, possibly a fighter. He's done some crazy things. He has all these legends surrounding him, and he's telling his story to someone else. And he's an unreliable narrator, and I talk about this a lot in my review, but the fact that he is an unreliable narrator, he's somebody who's telling a story, he's someone that knows he's telling a story, he's somebody that you get to kind of come out of his perspective and hear other people's opinions on his story. It's so good. It's so cool, and I still don't know a ton about what's going on in this world. I don't think the world building is particularly hard to get into, but there's still so many unanswered questions, and I'm not even mad about that. I am so excited to see more of the series and read more in the series, and it's such a good book. I highly recommend it. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Super good. And the last book that I read this month was I'll Meet You There by Heather Demetrios. This was one of my Patreon book picks for the month, and I'm going to be doing a full review on this one. It is a YA contemporary that follows a girl who is living in a small town in California, and she's trying to get out, and she is facing some poverty, and she's just really unhappy with where she is. And then she gets into a friendship/relationship with a guy that she used to know, who used to be kind of third-tier friends with, who just came back from the Afghanistan war, and he is now an amputee. So I have pretty high hopes for this book, because a lot of people have said it's a very different YA contemporary, but ultimately I still felt like it had a lot of the same YA contemporary tropes that I'm so sick of. I've mentioned before that I pick up YA contemporary, and then I'm kind of like, why did I do that? Because I end up usually thinking it's just kind of mediocre. And this was the same way. I liked a lot of things the characters were faced with. There's a different like poverty theme in here with the small town. The small town felt very realistic, and the characters talked in a way that was realistic for like a small town that has very different values and is faced with a lot of different things than a like bigger city would be. But at the same time, that made some of the characters very unlikable. The main male love interest talks in a way that makes him seem like he is from a small town and is believable. He's been in the military, all that kind of stuff, but is also offensive, and it never really gets reprimanded. It's mentioned a few times by the main character. She's the only one that ever says anything to anybody about their language. It gets kind of like, don't do that, by the main character a few times, but he never really changes. He's still doing that towards the end, and he just says derogatory things, especially about other races and also other sexualities, which is just kind of it's very off-putting. Like, I don't want to like a love interest that's like that. But ultimately, I still was pulling for this couple. They are very angsty back and forth, but there's a lot of the same kind of tropes of, like, she's the good girl, virginal, perfect, and he was the bad boy before he left, you know, misogynistic, sleeping with all these women, and now he's different, and blah, blah, blah. And the miscommunication plot line, you know, where, like, there's just miscommunication, and then, you know, she sees him with another girl, and he sees her with another guy, and it's all like, bleh. Those kinds of things happen throughout the story, which is kind of like, why? It was very quick and easy to read. It was compulsively readable. I think I read it in one day, but that doesn't make up for the fact that it's just kind of, like, mediocre. It's very middle of the road. It's very middle of the road. I think if you like YA contemporary, you're going to be all over this. It is better than a lot of YA contemporaries that I've read, but it still has a lot of the same themes and problems as a lot of the YA contemporaries that I've read. So I gave this one 2.5 out of 5 stars. So that is it for the books that I read in April. I'm not going to say it was a bad reading month, because some of these are very long books, but I wish I would have read a little bit more. But I'm super busy right now, so I'm kind of like not even that mad about it. It happens. Sometimes this happens. Comment down below, let me know if you have read any of these books and what you thought of them. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye!